Hello, welcome to CLACCA ULC Homegroup Bible Studies. My name is Mr. Rev, Comrade Rowley, and I would just like to acknowledge that the land that we're meeting on is of the Gadigal and the Wangal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. Recognise that sovereignty, treaty, and social justice has never been ceded. If you're just joining us, today we're going to be talking about Genesis 21. And Genesis 21 is a little bit different with a few surprises. So behind the text, we can see that it's still set sometime between 850 BCE and 550 BCE. We know that Moses is the author, and we know that it's still primarily focused on the origins and history of Israel, but more focused on the Abrahamic. But is primarily it's the birth of Isaac is really the turning point in the Abrahamic narrative that so far today has been very much about surviving exclusion that can be compared to the transgender experience or anybody who has experienced prejudicial exclusion. So still again along the theme of the origins and history of Israel, it's still a mythological, not historical document. So that is very much is clear. And as I said, the birth of Isaac it's a turning point in the Abrahamic narrative. We can see that while primarily it's focused on the birth of Isaac, and it talks about circumcision. However, there is a surprise, a surprise that occurs, and some laughter that occurs in overcoming expulsion. And it's not expulsion. And we can see that Sarah doesn't use a dead name to define the child, but defines the child by their birth heritage. There is also, but at the same time, there is also grief over the death of the birth of a child at the same time as well. An important thing to note is the primary reason why Sarah focuses on the birth description of the child is because Ishmael's name means God has heard the cry through in trying to survive exclusion that is difficult for anyone to survive. Within the text, we can break it up. We can easily break it up into three parts. So part one is primarily focused from 21 to 1 to 7. Is primarily focused on the promised child. Part two, two, is from eight to 21, and it's primarily focused on the relationship between Hagar, and Ishmael. Ishmael, which is very much about overcoming, is about surviving exclusion, exclusion from all recollection of what I can tell. And in from 22 to 34, there is a treaty that is set up with Abenaki. In front of the text is a message of inclusion that when it comes to exclusion, it's not a permanent thing, and that it can be overcome. It can be overcome with inclusion. Inclusion, and that's you don't have to continually simply because you were born different, or whatever has happened in the past. That is not something that you have to accept as a permanent thing, because it was never God's intention for humanity to be excluded into oblivion forever, and it was never exclusion was never intended to be God's purpose for humanity. Humanity. And I think what is good about this particular message is that it helps people to find ways of overcoming exclusion, and how to survive it. And that sometimes a name can be a powerful symbol of inclusion. Inclusion, and that God does listen. Thank you very much for joining us for Homegroup Bible Studies. It's only a short one today. If you want to join us for church, we start at 5 o'clock. Again, thank you very much for joining us. God bless, and I will see you next Sunday. I will see you at 5 o'clock. Bye for now.